Next Friday marks the 70th anniversary of D-Day, the day the Allies invaded Normandy and opened a Western front in World War II. Chances are the troops would have faced an even tougher fight if not for some special pilots spreading their wings in the run-up to the attack. Contributor Stephanie Riggs has their story.
On June 6, 1944, as Allied troops fought and died on the beaches of Normandy, high in the skies above the fray, thousands of U.S. warplanes lent vital support. And those planes were there, in part, thanks to the efforts of a little-known band of brave women far from the front lines. Women like Lucille Wise.
Well, I guess the last time I flew was in December 1944.
What was it like?
It was, well, it was hard to give up. I loved the flying.
At 93, Lucille is one of the few left to tell their story firsthand.
Why did you want to fly U.S. warplanes?
Well, of course, one reason, of course, was because I loved to fly. But I also wanted to help in the war effort. Everybody was so patriotic.
In 1942, the U.S. built thousands of planes in its war factories each month. These planes needed to be delivered to air bases, but pilots were in short supply.
And so in the summer of 1943, a call went out for women to do the flying.
I was accepted in May of '43, one of the earlier classes, and I went on the train down to Sweetwater, Texas.
25,000 women applied, and 1,100 were chosen as Women Air Force Service Pilots, WASPs.
We were trained the military way, just like the male cadets were trained. We lived in barracks, we slept on metal cots, and we learned to march, and we were under military discipline. We had demerits, we had to make our beds in a certain way, and we had inspections.
The WASPs are willing to plow into as rugged a 6-month stretch as anything handed to women in the whole war effort.
It was very stressful because we had to meet the requirements. But I think that we did prove that women could fly those airplanes just as well as the men could.
The WASPs proved themselves again and again, logging more than 60 million miles in more than 12,000 aircraft, like the B-17s, B-24s, and P-51 Mustangs, that helped win the war. But while other women involved in the war effort, the Rosie, the Riveters, and their like lived on in our popular culture, after the war, the WASPs were largely forgotten.
I think every American should be aware of what these women sacrificed and did during World War II. It was during a time when women were not able to have careers and do things outside of their traditional roles. And this was an opportunity to be adventurous, to serve their country, and they did it in such a graceful and beautiful way.
Jill Bond is a filmmaker whose documentary, We Serve Too, hopes to give the WASPs their due before it's too late.
And how many of the women that flew for the WASP are still around?
There's under 200 women still left. So I feel a sense of urgency to get this story out so those that are still with us can see that they're being recognized and that the country is really rallying behind them.
Well, none of the WASPs saw combat. Flying fast, powerful war machines was dangerous business. 38 women died in crashes. And since the women were classified as civilians, neither they nor their families received military benefits.
If a girl got killed, the parents didn't get anything. Not a flag, nothing. Not even any acknowledgement that their daughter had been in the military.
All that changed in 1976.
A new era began with the arrival of the first female cadets,
when with great fanfare, women were admitted into the Air Force. The WASPs took notice.
And they were putting out news releases that for the first time women would be flying military aircraft. And they had just kind of forgotten about us. And so that's when we got organized.
They got organized and got results. In 1977, the WASPs were reclassified as military veterans and granted full benefits. But for Lucille Wise and the others, real recognition came in 2009 when President Obama signed a bill awarding the WASPs the Congressional Gold Medal. House Speaker John Boehner.
And simply put,
The outstanding success that America achieved in the era during World War II would not have been possible without the women Air Force service pilots.
Deanie Parrish accepted the award for all the WASPs at a Washington ceremony the following year.
I believe this is the day that when the people of America will no longer hesitate in answering the question, do you know who the WASP were?
Today, more than 60,000 women serve in the U.S. Air Force, flying on the wings of a legacy that was almost left behind.
And those women give you the credit for opening the door for them.
They do, yes. If we had any part in it, I'm very pleased. They probably would have done it without us, but maybe we made it a little bit easier for them.
World War II fighters demanded precision. The United States military designed its planes for destruction and were difficult to fly.
There's a lot to learn. It's a very challenging thing. Flying is very challenging.
Lucille, you were really, really beautiful.
Well, I had a very good photographer.
At 93, Lucille Wise is among an exclusive group of remarkable grandmas who have a story to tell their grandchildren, one they've never read in our history books.
Why did you want to fly U.S. warplanes?
Well, of course, one reason, of course, was because I loved to fly. But I also wanted to help in the war effort. Everybody was so patriotic.
This is the story of a band of young, determined, and courageous women during
In a
World
new
War
film
II.
titled We Serve Too, filmmaker Jill Bond documents the accomplishments of the women Air Force service pilots during World War II.
When that war started, women took off their petticoats and rolled up their sleeves, and each one of them did something.
I think every American should be aware of what these women sacrificed and did during World War II. It was during a time when women were not able to have careers and do things outside of their traditional roles. And this was an opportunity to be adventurous, to serve their country, and they did it in such a graceful and beautiful way.
As a child, you lie on the ground and look at the clouds and everything, and I never thought I'd ever be flying above them, looking down on them. It was heaven. You didn't get any closer to God than being up there.
In 1942, the U.S. built thousands of planes in its war factories each month. These planes needed to be delivered to air bases, but pilots were in short supply.
We didn't have enough of anything. We didn't have enough aircraft. We didn't have enough pilots. We didn't have enough soldiers, sailors, ships.
And I was just very pleased that we were the first women to have a chance to fly U.S. military aircraft.
The Air Force recruited women pilots, brought in as civilians in the summer of 1943. 25,000 eager and excited women applied to participate in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
You know, being a gal, you didn't know anything about engines. You didn't know anything about anything except you could take shorthand, typing and bookkeeping, or you could take home ec. Well, no, thank you. I don't want to take home ec. And when it came to physics, I thought that was something you took for a stomachache. That's what my mother called it. And so I didn't know it was something you had to learn to fly airplanes. And I worked so hard. By golly, I did pass.
The WASP proved themselves over and over, flying more than 60 million miles within a 2-year period, delivering more than 12,000 aircraft, and piloting many of the military's newest planes.
And we flew what we call IFR, which is I follow the railroad. And you knew a railroad always went to a town. So if you ever got lost, you followed a railroad and it got you someplace.
The mechanic would write what's wrong with the airplane, and then they would fix it up and say it's repaired. Then we see, oh yeah, it's been repaired. We get into it, be sure it's repaired. Not always.
And not always did the flights go as planned. 38 WASP died during World War II. Classified as civilians, not one received any military benefits.
If a girl got killed, the parents didn't get anything. I mean, not a flag, nothing. Not even any acknowledgement that their daughter had been in the military.
To add insult to injury, in 1944, Congress denies the WASP military status and sends them home without any recognition of their 2-year service.
They'd say, "Oh, what did you do during the war?" And you'd start to tell them, and they'd look at each other and their eyebrows would go up, and so you stopped talking about it because you knew they didn't believe you.
And we're not in the encyclopedias, we're not very much mentioned at all.
In 2010, Congress finally awarded these forgotten pilots with the military's highest civilian honor, the Congressional Gold Medal.
That was a wonderful honor. It was a nice belated honor that Congress finally recognized that we were in service.
I wouldn't be able to wear the wings that I wear today if it wasn't for them wearing the wings that they've worn years ago, back in World War II.
I am just as gung-ho today as I was when my first day of boot camp. I can't get enough of the flag.
We're losing them constantly. So I feel a sense of urgency to get this story out so those that are still with us can see that they're being recognized and that the country is really rallying behind them.
And those women give you the credit for opening the door for them.
They do, yes. If we had any part in it, I'm very pleased. They probably would have done it without us, but maybe we made it a little bit easier for them.